Hi and welcome to the channel. I, like a lot of people, have been reevaluating over the past couple of months kind of how much money I've spent on physical media and that kind of stuff last year. I set up some collecting goals at the start of last year and they kind of got out of hand insofar as the things that I wanted to collect, I did, and then other things came along in the background. You know, the rabbit hole that you go down. And this new year has brought a couple new rabbit holes and it can't sustain. It just can't be done. So I thought I would look at it and see what changes I could make. Rather than falling into the trap of saying, right, unless I buy these discs, especially on release, because there's always something coming out next month, then I'll not get to see it. And that's just not true. Many of my favourite labels have streaming services. Arrow have a great streaming service that's very reasonable and very cheap. In fact, is often a quarter of the price of even one of the releases. For instance, all of January's titles are all on there to see. Similarly, anything that's not, or anything that's in the weird and wonderful of the zeitgeist, if I take Salty Rowan's random reviews, I take other channels' recommendations that maybe don't come out on those main labels of films to watch. I first have to check streaming, and if they're not there, maybe they're in physical media somewhere. I've done this before, and I know many of you have do this as well, but I'm going to rent a lot more movies. I'm going to load up the stack with movies and just get them sent to me. And then once I've watched them, I can categorise into, I'm glad I've seen that once, I never want to see it again, or I'll pick it up on a sale, or the other one, which is, you know, I've got to have this in my collection. This is something that's really brilliant and something that I would revisit again and again. So with that in mind, I'm going to do these videos to look at how I categorise each of these films that I watch. Rental services and streaming services aren't free, so do I actually end up spending more money because I want to pick them all up? Or is this actually going to save me money and ultimately space? Because it's not just the money, it's the running out of space, as you can see behind me. So for this first episode, I've got 6 titles. Right the way across, just like the rental service, I have loaded them up, I shuffled them up. I really don't care what I get sent next. Some of it will be recent releases, some of it will be further back. I just stuff that interested me or was recommended to me. And the first title I'm going to talk about is a really, really interesting film. So it's a third window release and it came out at the tail end of last year. And it's called Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes. Now, all that I'd heard about is that it sort of fit in the level of being One Cut of the Dead, insofar as, you know, there's more going on here than meets the eye. And certainly Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes is that film. And unlike One Cut of the Dead, which you can only best describe as it's a zombie flick, but don't give up on it after 20 minutes, I think you can do a bit better with Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes. It's from actually a stage group who this is their first kind of movie, and it's such a clever script. It's a guy on his TV, turns on his TV, and he turns around and he can have a conversation with himself. He's been told that the conversation from himself downstairs is 2 minutes in the future. He thinks this is weird, so he goes about to try and test it. He goes down to see, and sure enough, the conversation that he had upstairs starts to play with the conversation that he had downstairs. Fun, you might say, in its own right, but would get tiresome quickly. Which is why you introduce more characters and have people play with the ideas that are in there. It's so charming. It's so clever. And it often has you looking and thinking about things in a way of, does that actually make continuity sense? Or is it broken? And it often will make you pause it and rewind it and will prompt another watch. So it's definitely on the list of, I must pick this up. Like many third window releases, you get something a bit different there that you maybe don't get from other labels. You know, it's a bit left of centre, bit interesting in some way, but they pick interesting titles. And Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes still would not have made my top 15 releases of the year video that I've just done. If you haven't seen it, check it out. But it's ingenious and it's really clever. And it's got heart and it's funny. And for that reason, or for those reasons alone, this is the type of movie that I always gravitate towards. Really great. It's definitely getting picked up at the next early convenience. Second up is an 88 Films release. Now this fall it comes from the Cat 3 part of the collection that they've done. They did a erotic ghost story, they did the story of Ricky O, and they also did Robotrix. And Robotrix is a story of basically trying to create robot soldiers and how this turns into, you know, robot warfare, or, you know, it's kind of loosely based on the Terminator idea. You've got competing factions and competing sensibilities that are trying to produce this biggest kill machine, and so it goes on. Now, I do think you have to be in the state of mind for how silly some of these films are. I mean, this is off the charts silly, but off the charts silly with some pretty graphic sex scenes in it, hence the Cat 3 nature of the release. And the graphic sex scenes are okay. I'm just hoping my kids don't walk in on me, so I have to watch it at certain times, that kind of stuff. At a certain stage in my life, that would have been really interesting or something, you know, that would have been something that would have been a plus for it. It's kind of makes me feel uncomfortable when you do now, and it's not really used for great effect in it, other than it just being there, with the exception of maybe one scene. For me, this was very much I could do without watching this again, because there was that side of it. The story itself is silly to all hell, which is fine. I mean, if I had been solely in the mood for that and it had just been that bit, I think it'd have been along for the ride, but it didn't quite line up for me. Now, I have said in my Letterboxd review, I think in another day and another time, I might love this. It might be exactly the kind of escapism or the kind of stuff I'm looking for, but on this watch it wasn't, and therefore it's something that I'm just not going to watch again. And unless it comes up in a sale or something of that order, it'll not be in the collection, so money saved there. Next one that arrived through the door was The Girl and the Snake-Haired Witch. Now, this is an Arrow release, again, came out last year, and it's a Japanese horror film. That's, I think, earns the title of horror film, actually. You know, it's from way back, and it tells the story of a girl that's taken in an orphanage and brought to the person who's, she's told, is her real mum and the real dad. And things are weird in that house. Things just don't all seem to be as they are. She keeps getting creeped out or seeing people, and it's quite clear that there's somebody else in the house, or the people that are in the house are not pertaining to who they appear to be. And it's not long before it's realised that that is indeed true. And there's a bit of a mystery goes on about who these people are, what their agenda is, and how it all plays out. Now, I do think parts of this are horrific, and especially when you consider like other films that are called horrors of around that time, they're not particularly scary, and I don't think this is particularly scary, but some of the mask work and some of the prosthetics that they use are, I mean, I was watching it, my wife was asleep beside me, she woke up to go to the toilet, and she was horrified. I mean, just at the part that probably would have done that or something, but there are genuinely jumpy and scary moments in it, and it's got a real style, and because it's very, you know, stylish with its monochrome setting, and almost like a bit of a noir. They really use light and shade very well here. I think this is cool. I think this is really something that I could watch again. If you were going to show somebody an example of an earlier horror movie that is, I think, scary for parts of it, or has scary elements, and an interesting story like many good horror films do, I think this is a really good example. It's not a film that I would rush out and buy, but if there was one in a sale, I definitely look to pick it up. I mean, I do love my Japanese cinema, especially the stuff that Arrow put out. It's the kind of stuff I would have bought sight unseen beforehand and been quite happy with. This I would have been quite happy if I had purchased day one. I'm going to miss out on the slipcover. So be it. This is a film that I'd like to have in my collection, but maybe not worried about it being just today. Next up after that, well, is a 101 Films release, and it was first brought to this attention by Into the Blue, Carl putting this in his top 5 fantasy films video, I think. This is The Headhunter, and it's a very, very low budget film that tells the story of a hunter from fantasy or medieval times who kills his victims and puts them on a stake on the wall. Now, I did say this was very low budget, so it's not like we get these very grandiose fight scenes. There's nothing, Lord of the Rings level. In fact, an awful lot of it's done with creating tension and how it's shot and the colours, etc. that are in there. He is motivated to find the person or the monster that killed his daughter. There's, like I say, there's lots of up close, lots of first person shots of him moving his way through and going. It's incredibly moody. It's really cool, but it's also just missing that bit for me. For as cool and as well made that it is, especially on the budget that it purported to have. I mean, it's a feat of filmmaking, but I think it misses the mark from just being a great fantasy film. I mean, somebody that reads a lot of fantasy can probably see that kind of stuff in behind me in some of the books if you can make them out, but it's not. It needs that extra level. It needs that bit more backstory or the bit more interaction with other people, because it's very much a solitary lone wolf story of him going about and doing his bit. There's very few other characters in it at all, and with that in mind, I don't know. It would have to be in a good sale, good price. It's one of those things that's very cool. I don't have very much of a 101s film section apart from my Black Label stuff. And as such, I don't really feel the need to pick up singular releases unless it's something that really grabs me and jumps out at me. And this one, unless I think about it again or see it again at a later date, is not one that I definitely have to have in the collection. But like I say, good sale. I could definitely think about it. Only a couple more to go. And next up was a film from Network, and one that is quite famed. In fact, it's so famed it had a remake. It's The Woman in Black. Now, it had a more recent remake with Daniel Radcliffe, and it's an ITV drama, which is kind of shocking. But it tells the story of a law firm whose one of the clients dies, and one of the junior members has to go to the house and go to the area and organise her affairs. So get the house in order, sell the house, whatever it is to be done. But once he gets in the town, it becomes quite clear that there's again more going on here than would appear to be the case. I don't really know what else to say about this, because I think a lot of the fun or interest comes in seeing how that plays out. How you have this what would seem to be normal village life, and then this manor and this house that has some unexplained things going on. It would be simple to say that it's a ghost story, and certainly at its heart it is, but it's very much a psychological thrillerish ghost story, and it goes places that I did not expect it to go. And again, can I believe that this was actually shown on primetime TV as was at that time? Everything seemed to be very watered down at those times, especially ITV. It seems unlikely, but yet here we are. And the fact that they were allowed to do it kind of speaks volumes for maybe the trust that was placed in the filmmaking makers and the filmmaking crew that were in there. I think Woman in Black is terrific. Will I rush out to get it? I mean, yes, but again, I don't have a very big Network collection. I think it's something that I would really like to have, though, in the collection at some stage. So, it's something I would pay full price for, but I might it'll be an easy pickup for a sale. Certainly. And the last one I'm going to talk about is another Arrow release. And it did come out last year and appeared in a lot of end-of-year lists as being a top release. And it's Over the Edge. Now, Over the Edge, as far as I can make out, was a bit of a passion project for the producers at Arrow. It's something they really wanted to make, and something that they put a lot of time and effort into producing a really great release for. It's one of those films that people seem to have grown, or the love for this film seems to have grown in stature over a period of time, to the point where people want to see it more and more and want to see a good presentation of it. But what is Over the Edge? I mean, it's many things. It's very much a youth culture, teenage angst film. It's set in Middle America, so to speak, although it was shot in Colorado, but that's not really where it was set in real life. And it tells a sort of true life story of what happened. And it's really about, unruly youths trying to be controlled by adults. You've got an overzealous police force. You have a mayor who is only worried about the growth of the area in terms of house prices, etc., and the fact that these kids and their attitude and their behaviour is hurting that. And then you have the kids who just want to be kids. They want to roam about in the free. They want to mess about. And one of the things I think the story does very well is not portray these kids as angels, as totally innocent, because they aren't. They cross the line into criminal behaviour, and this kind of leads you to think, oh god, they're a bad bunch. But then you see how they're treated, and it all gets mixed together and say, well, there's reasons why they're acting out. There's nobody really supporting or looking after these kids, well, in the main, but in authority, and any attempts to reach out to these kids are being met with some resistance. So I think Over the Edge is kind of brilliant. It may have made my top 15 list, although it's a pretty great list of films, but yes, it probably would have made my top 15 list, haven't seen it now. And for that reason, it's something that I intend to go out and get very soon. I mean, I'll not get the slipcase version, but again, I just want this disc because they've went to town in the disc. There is any amount of extras on this. In fact, there's like a multi-part documentary series that they've put on there. They've broken it into like 7-8 parts, something like that, of about 10-12 minutes each, that kind of look at different areas. So they speak to the filmmakers that were involved, so Jonathan Kaplan, who directed it. They speak to Matt Dillon and a lot of the crew and cast that are in it, and it's some that's really joyous, because I think it is the cast that make an awful lot of this. There's a real camaraderie throughout the entire film. Some great performances. Very, very young Matt Dillon. And I think the fact that they tried to cast authentic, just young people, not stage kids, but they went into a school and tried to find people that had that look and had that feel about them, and were raw, and that they could be moulded. I think that was so cool. And like I say, the documentaries and everything that goes on this, I mean, this is such one of the most stacked releases I've ever seen. And for that reason, it has to be in my collection. Not only a great film, a great release, great disc, and it's well worthy of being the top disc and top release for a lot of people. And that's my first month-ish as we come to the end of it. It's not quite a full month, but of this rental experiment. But I've narrowed down some of those releases that were looked at and stroked some off. I mean, Robotrix is £25. Not to say I definitely would have bought it. It was definitely on the fence, but I'm not going to now, so there's money saved there. And another way is, oh god, well, I've just cost myself also about, £15 for the Over the Edge, etc. You get the idea. We'll see how this goes. If you've made it this far, thank you very much for watching. Let me know what your feelings are about any of those films that you've seen. I'm sure for some people, some will be real favourites, and maybe I should give them another go. Maybe that's the point where you talk me into selling my money that way. Anyway, thanks for watching. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.